Officials in the U.S. are stepping up security ahead of Memorial Day weekend in the wake of the Manchester terror attack. The bombing also prompting officials to rethink security measures at venues across the world. Just take a look at this chilling tweet sent hours before Monday's bombing. It says, quote, "Security is not good at Manchester Arena. No one was checking our bags or jackets or anything." Retired FBI Assistant Director and Counterterrorism and Counterintelligence expert Jan Fedarcyk is in Washington and joins us now. Jan, when you read something like that tweet and you see it, what's your reaction?
Well, I think that we can recognize that protecting venues like concert halls and malls and stadiums pose unique challenges. Fundamentally, it's important to keep in mind that in the wake of 9/11 and through the years with all of the different terrorism attacks that have been experienced, in particular, soft targets like stadiums, like malls, like concert halls, pose a unique challenge. And certain things like magnetometers, bag checks, explosive sniffing dogs really are the purview of the management of those venues. So it is important to make sure that there are appropriate security mechanisms in place to protect the public that is flowing into those venues for particular events.
Yeah, I think we've all become accustomed to seeing the bag check and some metal detectors even in other areas. It's something that's just become a part of daily life and going to events. We've got a holiday weekend coming up. What changes in security may we see or not see that will go into place this holiday weekend just here in the U.S.?
Well, I think you probably have already seen that. The public has already probably experienced that. The forward face of that would be an increased law enforcement presence around what we're starting to become accustomed to being known as soft targets. So you'll see that increased law enforcement presence, perhaps more screening to get into certain venues and areas, and that's just the world that we are living in and have come to expect. What the public will not see is the work that's going on behind the scenes by law enforcement in terms of looking at the intelligence flow. And one of the best mechanisms that we have in place here in the United States are the Joint Terrorism Task Forces that are run by the FBI. That has become a model of cooperation for federal, state, and local authorities to come together in a structured task force environment to have access to the highest levels of information and intelligence, and to be able to share that appropriately through standardized protocols. Those are the things that go on behind the scenes. The public will not see some of the staged capabilities and heightened resources that law enforcement can bring to bear should they need to do so.
The one thing you talk about, the sharing of intelligence, but we've seen that with the sharing of intelligence in this case, we now have leaks. How concerning is that to agencies being able to work together?
Well, it's very concerning. Anytime there are leaks during an ongoing investigation, particularly one as sensitive and tragic as the Manchester terrorist attack, it poses a real issue for law enforcement because it compromises the integrity and the protected nature of the information that they need to be able to go out and conduct their investigation in a way that is not telegraphing information to potential adversaries.
If there's a bottom line to it for people out there, what can people do to be more safe? I don't think it matters if the attack is in England or here in the U.S. It's a heightened alert, it seems, for everyone.
Well, and we've all heard the standard advice, the situational awareness protocols, but also just being willing to contact law enforcement if there is something that they observe or that something that does not look right to them. They're never wrong in approaching law enforcement with that type of information. But also, if you're going into areas where there are mass gatherings of people and perhaps you're going as a group to make sure that you plan accordingly. Do you know where the exits are? Do you have a plan to meet up afterwards? If so, where is that? And to just be generally aware of your surroundings.
In this case, we heard that this was somebody, that the bomber was someone who was on the radar, people were aware of. We've heard that before. Are authorities doing enough, or is this something we just have to accept? Somebody may be known, but the actual threat that they cause may not be yet.
Well, the whole issue of radicalization is a very difficult one, and individuals progress along that pathway at different speeds and may come on to the radar of law enforcement at different times during that progression. And there, quite frankly, is a limitation of resources. As individuals are brought to their attention, the due diligence that goes into taking a look at that individual to see whether they pose a threat or not is something that law enforcement takes seriously. But you can't keep an individual on or under investigation 365 and until the end of their lifespan. It's just not possible to do that. So you do the best you can from a law enforcement perspective to understand where this person is at the current point in time and determine what other actions you need to take to either eliminate him or her as a potential threat, and put your plans in place accordingly. But it's unrealistic to expect that individuals can stay on that radar indefinitely.
You know, one of the other things that we noticed yesterday, it was just a lot of speed in making arrests in the, I would say, the 24 hours after this bombing even. Things seem to have slowed down a little bit. Can you give us any sense of if that's normal, what authorities are still looking for right now?
Well, I think the immediacy following a terrible event like this of law enforcement to start gathering information, unraveling whether they're dealing with one individual or potentially a conspiracy, gathering the evidence, conducting interviews. There is that immediate reaction and response to this event. But then it steadies into the ongoing investigation, which will obviously continue to unfold as we go forward. So it's not that the speed of the investigation has necessarily slowed down as much as the next steps are probably still being planned and unfolding.
You know, Jan, one thing I'm going to take you away from maybe this investigation here in the U.S., one of the topics we've been talking about now for the past 2 weeks, a replacement for the director at the FBI. And we've heard from a lot of people saying this needs to be someone who doesn't have an R or a D. You would know better than most. What do we need in a director now for the FBI?
Well, I think from my perspective, and it's strictly my perspective, the FBI is apolitical. And leadership at the top, of course, is incredibly important for the nation's largest and I would argue most prestigious law enforcement and intelligence agency. And putting a leader in place who understands the Department of Justice, who understands law enforcement, I think is a solid choice, as opposed to somebody perhaps from a political perspective.
Jan Fedarcyk covering several subjects for us. Jan, we certainly appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.